The right to work.
4. Literature review. Analyze scholarly research. Up-to-date studies on transgender health and wellness reveal increasing risks associated with the right to work, amid rising stigma and public policies that threaten transgender identities and human autonomy. Civil rights, including the right to work and marriage equality, face further restrictions in public services and access to resources. Extremist groups citing public safety concerns have sought bodily harm as a solution to transgender rights and marriage equality. Conservative religious beliefs are often used to oppose studies that demonstrate the effectiveness of transgender (TS) inclusion. The lack of inclusion is further discussed in this literature, which advocates for the right to work is dismissive of new findings. Study after study shows compounding results of the dispirited future of trans women globally, traffic in the slave trade, and many are HIV positive. Correspondingly, skewed and old statistics are compounding down on the bright future of modern-day trans women not relegated to sex work and intravenous drug use. This stigma in federal legislators creates a steep bias in IN's lives. Global Trends, 2025's number of newly infected HIV patients, which depicts the lives of transgender persons as most are being forced into sex work and experiencing slow starvation. But, for Americans, the fight for the right to work is extremely steep. Wilson's, 2025, conclusion of the explanatory study on trans women dating highlights facts about HIV/AIDS today. Research to improve impact in HIV prevention for trans women will also need to incorporate interventions for their cis men sexual partners. And without identifying and addressing structural barriers related to racism, including within partnerships, the U.S. will not be able to end the HIV epidemic. Page 13. Following trends of anti-LGBT legislation, healthcare has been divided into exclusionary policies targeting LGBT individuals in opposition to marriage equality, which are already in appeals, and identity use as a fuel for thousands of transgender murders. Life as a transgender person faces daily sacrifices, and the American public's response is political violence. Regressive government and domestic terror from the entire right-wing party have made gunshots a daily fear around the world. These claimed moral codes that serve white nationalism and seek to dismantle the social structures and aid separatism voted by Christian national theology. This is a black transgender woman's death sentence and a rewritten history of the criminology of oppression. Ultimately, escaping social stigma for transgender persons remains impossible and has resulted in thousands seeking refuge from a non-American religious fanatic state. Studies indicate that the social climate influences both micro and macro interactions, affecting care and civility. Anti-subordinate claims present in the data suggest that in the conclusions of these sociological studies, the need for the removal of federal bans and permanent inclusion of transgender rights in legislation such as the Equality Act, 2025. The Equality Act, 2025, is not yet a law, but it has sparked many pointed exclamations. Defining sex discrimination, the Act cites LGBTQ+ Congress protections as dedicated to the same mission statements as many LGBT rights organizations. Human Rights Campaign, HRC's mission statements, N.D. Create a world where lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender and queer, LGBTQ+, people in all of our intersecting identities realize systemic equality, equity and liberation in all aspects of life. Page 1. Still here are these light organizations fighting for continued marriage equality. Human Rights Campaign and other organizations hope that data will prevent the removal of said access granted with real egalitarian democracy. HRC's Equality Act, N.D. webpage which reads additionally, the Equality Act would update the public spaces and services covered in current law to include retail stores, services such as banks and legal services, and transportation services. These important updates on protections for everyone backing new law, N.D., April 25, 2025, page 1. The fundamental legislation is ignored by right-wing conservatives and celebrated while live shootings add a smokescreen to the American subjection of the disabled, traumatized, battered AIDS/HIV survivors. Further research based on the Equality Act has revealed in material produced by the International Journal of Law and Management that CEA, 2010, was a replacement for sex discrimination protections, citing a judgment that added transgender protections, 2008, Hussein, Rizvi, and Sheikh, 2022, page 6. Sandbag and overvalued statistics continue to show limited service in the transgender community. However, the availability of dedicated services is extremely limited in both research and practice. This lack of access is especially pronounced outside of large, socially progressive cities, where in-person specialist services may be infeasible due to the small size and geographical dispersion of the TGD population. Connolly, Dewan, and Holland, 2025. Weight statistics of compounded information to compensate for stealth transition technology have been able to provide little care. TS employment following the interpretations in the court surrender TS protections, now requesting all transgender healthcare ban and employment exclusion in the public sector and military life. Trans life is dangerous in many places. In 2025, people globally are whirling themselves in squalor to be self-identified in the gay ghetto. The punishment for those two trans and queer is a place in the heart of prostitution, a systemic crime and violence known to many persons wanting to raise LGBT awareness and its colored flag, in pride. And, if denied, they are presented with dangerous socioeconomics, systemic erasure, and violence in all capitals. The Anti-LGBT Free Speech and Group Subordination Law Review adds the UK revision of hate crimes that is cited in LGBTQ+ inclusions in 2021 for transgender people. Said, literal findings of government support are now being tested and display the strengths of past research for transgender TS healthcare, Hussein, Rizvi, and Sheikh, 2022, page 20. The weakness listed in Mazaros and Quistorf, 2025, explains the lack of accurate information based on stigma and stereotypes. Finding little evaluation of test groups or data collection accounting for overbearing demographics based on individual beliefs shared by many types of religious people, not just many types of people, page 7. Trans women's experiences have especially been villainized due to the intolerant conservative agenda rebelling against violence in the capital and the streets, yet still, there remains a poor society failing. The police have militarized against its major cities, citizens, and vulnerable populations, refusing vital healthcare, weaponizing guns, and promoting white supremacy as legislators will. The strengths of existing theory have been produced in self-identifying and trauma recovery. Many speak of social transition as dangerous and medicalization Mirandizing. The HRC Foundation adds, in June 2020, the Supreme Court ruled in Bostock v. Clayton County that Title V of the Civil Rights Act prohibits employment discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender identity because they are types of sex discrimination. Testing the strengths of past research conclusion, anti-LGBT laws are illegal, N.D., April 25, 2025, page 1. The weakness list in Right to Work Revisited explains the lack of accurate information based on stigma and stereotypes. Finding little evaluation of test groups or data collection demographics. Trans women's experiences have especially been villainized due to the intolerant conservative agenda rebelling against violence in the capital and the streets. A poor society fails as the police have militarized against its major cities, citizens, and vulnerable populations. Contributing factors and impact of human group behavior. Socioeconomic impacts that celery the contributing factors and impact on visibility and sustainability of resources during funding discriminations serve as a violent eraser glorifying the death of these persons. This social microaggression displays the dismembering global apathy that makes the TS workforce zero. Oppression metric explains weighted categories from the immoral percent, saying that they add harmful stigma in public spaces with murderous intent based on religious psychosis, Mazaros, and Quistorf, 2025. Application of these barriers in the research has a translucent effect that values status over morality, as shown in this theory-veiling inquest on the social organization killing transgender persons globally. Transgender increased visibility has multiplied the impact and degendered the fight for equality, at home and abroad. TS inclusion has been miraged with a slew of other fascisms that barrage the public sector, adopters of federal layoffs, stole TS pensions, and government shutdown. These societal factors contributed to the hostile workplaces and violence perpetuated by white supremacist and commander-in-chief pro-gun, tandems on pro-violence, pro-gun, anti-color colonialism propaganda still taking lives. Fully targeting the transgender body that is mutated for religious expressions is a fear tactic similarly seen in the public lynching of black men around the country. This study's thematic analysis findings promote the awareness needed to achieve the liberation of transgender persons, saying, accessibility to jobs despite gender identity is bleak, particularly in smaller organizations in comparison to larger organizations. Krishna and Sharma, 2024, page 767. This research is meant to flood lamp on these autocratic oversight and first systematic policy corrections that do not kill. The group thought and bystanders complex and in full effect, citing status theory as the culprit. Investigation on data trends finds that study differences talk more about the social behaviors in the workplace, telling of TS exculpatory findings. Data from results of the study The Equality Act, 2010, pre- and post-pandemic historic development on equality and discrimination issues for employers shows how in certain situations it allows employers to specifically recruit either male or female workers, replaced by the Equality Act. These are the same rights needing to be adopted in America. Hussein, Rizvi, and Sheikh, 2022. Mazaros, and Quistorf, 2025, in a study called Right to Work Revisited point out that the right to work is available in 26 states and say this intensifies the effects of unemployment for TS women in combination with stigma described in these sample sets, page 10. They still have even further global effects impacting cisgender persons with ugly laws and bans on marriage equality in bathrooms. Atlantis Press International BV of Krishna and Sharma, 2024, study challenges faced by transgender people in obtaining employment. A thematic analysis says purpose of sampling technique was used using this inherently biased method to form the statistics based on the unemployment crisis, page 767. These global impact methodologies is Turkey able to tell the stories of TS Memorial Work Initiative whose ambitions aim toward federal civil liberties and anti-subjection policy that improve TS persons' socioeconomic status. The fluttering up of the social status of all persons, cisgender, and male. Bacon, Fourier, and De Kuyper, 2025, about norm discourse to legitimate neoliberal activation. The study, work still a right if it has become a norm? Disability inclusion in labor market policy discourse says, work is seen as a necessary condition for and not one of many ways to inclusion in society, page 1. Something many see as a woke ideology, now that transgender visibility and community have increased civil service to create supplemental rights and government protections. Connolly, Dewan, and Holland, 2025, findings support the same widening of the pay gap with statements as follows. All evidence suggests that TGD people experience disproportionate drug-related harm relative to cis people. This disparity appears likely to widen with increasing hostility from governments in the UK, US, and elsewhere. To mitigate this harm, urgent action is required to ensure TGD people are meaningfully included in research, public health surveillance, and support services, page 8. Modernization and technological innovation are not accounted for in this statistic and a lack of truth-telling from honest transgender experiences. Unethically, these extremes should not paint the lives of so many global citizens nor shape LGBT experience nor death by firearm. Further exclusions of the transgender community promote gender stereotypes prompting high mobility rates in all women's statistics. Farley's, N.D. These findings further the need for black, gay, and transgender social inclusivity and other lost protections that make America a slave nation as the global state of democracy is thumped in orange pandemonium. Poor economic solutions yield to bigoted politicians and policy. Data analysts predict LGBT inclusion to be removed, and families should flee concentrations of resources provided by the American regime. Previously attempted solutions. For the people and by the people, the observations lead this thing to more inclusive LGBT policymakers like Sarah McBride and people in power that will create various checks and balances not available in the past. Also, more testing and incentivized surveys should reveal the mother to the vinegar that kills LGBT liberty. In this descriptive study, we see LGBT persons stripped of their autonomy not to be able to tell their own stories to the intense stigma in the media that is unrelated to the Equality Act 2025 campaign. Yet, still reminds Americans that its core values are liberty and justice for all. Others supporting of Equality Act 2025, Sager and Tebb, 2019, summing that hurt feelings don't exclude social responsibility, page 5. The social responsibility is a principle of inclusion felt by everyone. Bad acts only remove self-legitimized access. Public accommodations are the crux of sociologically prescribed cultural symbols. Accessibility is a humanities term not exclusive to a habitual phantasm, that is human religion. Depicting this set of reality principles are sociological norms that present a strong agreement and oppose the federal government's targeting of transgender persons and TS Work Initiative purpose as a global ask for outreach. Recording the accuracy of the supplement studies shows an acute analysis that must be updated and brought to the public. Farley's Sociology BA recommendation included an anonymous incentive survey, a reduced questionnaire, and mass online polling to increase accuracy and regional demographics. Reducing the statistics using anonymous testing is imperative in order to grasp the monumental unity amongst society's voices to provide accessible and accommodating spaces. The recycling of old ideas of defensive anti-LGBT policies, with a new inclusive union as a collection of studies suggests, is increasing employment retention. Reviewing these descriptive studies helps draw an explanation for the halt in trans liberation. Skewed and old statistics are compounding down on the bright future of modern-day trans women not relegated to sex work and intravenous drug use. Contested contrary support in the study. Transfeminist scholarship went on to enable important critiques of the sex/gender binary from a non-Western perspective. In this way, writers such as Emi Koyama, 2003, Claudia Sofia Garriga Lopez, 2016, and Marquis Bay, 2022, call attention to the importance of moving beyond Western feminism's cisnormativity, that is, the perspective that takes a non-trans woman's experience as the default experience, say, that LGBT organizations found faults with LGBT legislation. Policy, now preventing work for the total number of LGBT persons on the globe. These global statistics show the rate at which stigma creates systemic violence and provide more information about transgender health. The needs mentioned by Connolly, Dewan and Holland, 2025, in the drug study will be influential in continued virtual care. Thus, status theory sociological observations fit here to show the study should be inclusive to capture all DEI descriptive statistics in TS Memorial, as an all-women statistic. Predictions on this inclusive all-women statistic are seen clearly in the Sociological Review on Macroeconomics Impacting the Pay Gap. As shown by Sterling et al., 2024, add a caveat to the scientific methods attempting to retrieve supporting data, cultural beliefs about the appropriateness of women and men for engineering and CS that influence pay, meanwhile, may exist. Sociologists have argued that cultural beliefs about the appropriateness of women and men in engineering and CS professions operate at the societal level in ways that affect women's and men's beliefs, page 7. This same influence can be seen in the TS Memorial Initiative Work T-test, with sample data under 30. T-statistics in the sample mean could display positive relationships to social problems, H2B, and the federal bathroom ban. With this hypothesis test at a level of significance of 5%, the Memorial data collected yield a confidence interval that suggests increased stigma. This opinion poll's influence in the private sector is seen in daily interactions, simply example like peace culture during the Vietnam War, as a cultural normality began peace talks. Just as we mourn, you mourn our loss, and we see the status theory and relative statistics expressions that explain these one-to-one correlations worsening stigma on Black trans youth. Preventing more loss of life is a paramount initiative of Teens Memorial and should be recognized for potential funding and revision of this survey. Conclusion. Designing the study. Without the presence of transgender women, there's no women statistics considering women and children make up most of the poor. Anti-LGBT policies triple that gambit and also collide with women's healthcare. This all-women statistic is an effort to capture the work scenario proposed in All Access Spaces campaigns that implements equal pay. Anonymous data collection methods will strengthen the research methods of TS Memorial, Transgender Women's Single Double List Survey Flipkart. To present results on public opinions. Building new legislation takes new lawmakers and specifically LGBT lawmakers, police, teachers, and federal appointees. These position and appointments granted will encourage integration and build social structures of friendship and reliance. City, states, and federal efforts to grow the public sector with Transit Work Initiative TS Memorial that will institutionalize equal pay for all employee in scenario as a self-help Patmos. These goodwill atmospheres of community foster LGBT rights in the community, aid adoption, and end unemployment dispiriting this community and killing Black transgender women. No more is the social organization an obligation of hate and a battle for resolute fixtures but a time of renaissance in calisthenics. Sociological imagination says that you are what you eat, remembering workplace exposure set opticals for success. Social problems reads, as sociologists have stressed for decades, equal pay, the glass ceiling, and gender hostilities are only surface manifestations of sexism. To eradicate sexism, we need go beyond the surface and develop social policies that cut sexism's social roots, Henslin, 2013. For Farley S. N.D., all women's statistics recommendation to prevent lower participation. Farley, N.D., Memorial should offer incentives similar to a youth advisory board at Community Health Awareness Group whose awareness mission was to first strengthen friendship between transgender persons. Which Choring Voices presented cheers to new paths for new lawmakers, doctors, and professionals solving social problems. Solving social problems, rice challenges, and pickled broths of advancement show that equity has been little achieved in post-industrial America. This social evolution happiness globally shows the need for diversity, equity, and inclusions. Modern solution provokes separatism and short-circuit social structures that have been associated with bigoted polices. Henslin, 2013, talks about poor divisions of labor and social subsidies that aid heteronormativity and health Black trans survival. Furthering these unconstitutionally expensive gender quotas only balances this broken system of the pay gap. Examples like Henslin's text, to help the poor, we have a social policy called the per-child tax credit, commonly called a negative income tax. Parents whose income falls below a specified amount get a tax credit of $2,000 per child. If they have 3 children and their income is below $54,000, their tax bill will be reduced by $6,400. Internal Revenue Service 2018, Henslin, 2013. The fellowed right in earned income is a thief that is kill LGBT person daily. Add stigma compounds the issue steadily, just as lifetime caps that still kills HIV patients without affordable medicine. Supporting related policies found in the passages observing socialized equal pay say, government passed the 1996 Personal Responsibility and Work Opportunity Reconciliation Act. This law requires states to place a lifetime cap on welfare assistance and compels welfare recipients to look for work and take available jobs, Henslin, 2013. Compounding social constructions that create these vacuums on transgender acceptance and/or discrimination that follows in student life, workplace practices, and federal funding. Loss provision eats away at those protections and legitimacy earned from gender equality and pay protections, as women are like to die after retirement. The data says the modern-day workplace is dissatisfied with 4 in 6 underemployed and 1% satisfied opinions, pages 1-44. The modern social order has cognitively detached in the cultural war zone. Social stigmas can show relatable statistic on global crises most often occurring in the workplace impacting trans women most frequently, as trans women are banned from equal opportunity and prospective pay. To address the problem of pay gap, we justified anonymity in the survey and requests qualitatively from all guests your story. As storytellers plant the ground, trekking a Yeti through elm of forgiving social evolution. These contingencies will improve life expectancy of the Black transgender women by enforcing the Equality Act. As we reviewed earlier, poverty is largely feminized, said Henslin, 2013, that is, women with children make up most of the poor. A feminist point of view, says theorists scratch out, this imbalance exists because women do not receive equal pay. Macro sociologists show broader level, social policies that lead to flexible work schedules and higher pay for women will help. So will improvements in trans women's job training for career advancement, which should present similar results. As is the social orders that continues to produce social policies promoting the least childcare facilities and childcare assistance that will also help equalize pay. Harmonies that legally play a chorus tunes meant to protect that stand as reminders of suffrages. Together rising at the horizon of Black executives and LGBT lawmakers consuming the lobbyists' agenda, still swirling through EPA regulations, administrative restrictions, and fortune strikes in redline states and federal banks crash the economic system, protect the labor market. This chaos will not end without transgender inclusion that sixth the industry globally. Public statistics show this absence of DEI policies that adds new politician to the forced conservative upchucking in global industries, oil, and human capital. The human capital of every market economy structure may change with the investment of technology, but the human capital needs further resources to maintain obelisk motives. The transgender women are that stands to receive equal play for equal work. Anticipated outcomes and resolutions would be a team response for the Farleys, N.D., All Women's Statistics TS Memorial Conference, which in meetings can produce invitations to discuss all women's conferences and men's events. Potential flip cards, questions for survey and aid, legal actions better for women's participation and an impact awareness on men's health. Anticipated questions should query the public opinion is not reflective of women's bathroom concerns and policy equity that is missing in the workplace. Sociological implications of the pragmatism set in the display in conference discussion present unwired appointments with which new social problem curved. The sociological perspectives mentioned by Dewey, N.D., overviews social pragmatism, page 310, and present the reward exchange theory for humanity and social efforts that will be reduced as a strain on the citizen. 2024, data show the workplace scenario needs improvements to increase retentions and protections for the employee. Programs like DEI, Affordable Care Act create learning opportunities for employers that change dynamics of subordinate and subordinates interactions. These status theories are critical in maintaining revenue projections and environmental sustainability of the workplace culture that autonomously supports and grows itself. Introducing social constructions that yield legitimacy to LGBT issues improves the ecological social constructs bearing stigmas that transform the potential of Black transgender woman. A pathway program that targets success and achievements in the macro-sociological fields, 8 additions to the social organization's resheet. Without collecting the data at to Memorial, the survey lacks a control or all women statistic. TS Memorial's more influential in promoting all access spaces. Now safest when you're not alone, Trans Women at Work are an initiative for all women and capable to abolish gender pay and access. Impact and predictions will hold great futures. Related statistics present open perspectives detailing how social structures will prevent closing of the pay gap, yet it is still shrinking hourly. Will the pay gap close without TS work investments? Now asterisk, PX. In 2025, 50% knew they would lose their job, pages 1-44. How many are underpaid, without training and have no food and clean water in American homes, corner or turnabout? LGBT person globally experiences homelessness at a rate 8 times more, like than cis women or men of any race. Stemmas of violence subordinates LGBT culture, person and health awareness to a lesser status. Equal pay prevents those exposing factors trans women, and I overcome fight workplace stigma, escaping trafficking. Workplace social Darwinism in the social order impact micro-interaction in a quantifiable way. Here results should reflect predicted workplace stigma but, with Farley's N.D. all women statistic we can use qualitatively responses of the flip card towards social engagement. The social question on equal pay is less possible the unrealistic. Stigma can only be quelled in the mixing pots transnationalistic nature adopting nurtures land systems hold social constructs formidable in negotiations and profit medians. Sharing a culture of teaching is the new service teamwork that regrows forests. Gully, in the response the TS Work Initiative investing requirements compare as nothing yet, showing a commitment pathways TS Work Initiative. Professional development, scholarship and community can be achieved. Improving the lives of trans women saves lives and promotes safety for all women. References: Henslin, J.E.M., 2019. Social Problems. Stigma in the workplace. Cultivating a positive workplace culture. How positive leadership and practices can encourage workers. Kristen Farley.